She lowered her eyes as she scrubbed the marble floor, unaware that the most dangerous man in the room had already decided she would never be invisible again. You are about to witness a story where love is not gentle, where protection feels like a curse, and where two people from opposite worlds are bound by a mistake that should never have happened. The first thing Amara Johnson learned about the mansion was that silence was mandatory, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy kind that pressed against her chest as she worked. Every step echoed too loudly. Every breath felt observed. She kept her head down, as she had been taught to do her entire life, because looking up had never brought her anything good. The mansion belonged to a powerful family. That much was obvious in the way the employees walked carefully, spoke softly, and avoided certain corridors as if they carried ghosts. Amara had been hired through an agency that asked very few questions, which suited her just fine. Questions always led to stories, and stories led to pity. She didn't want pity, she wanted work. A room to sleep in. A place where no one knew her past. She wore the same uniform every day. Plain, modest, designed to erase her presence, and it worked. People passed by her as if she were part of the furniture. She cleaned, she folded, she cooked when asked, and when the family was present, she disappeared into the background like a shadow trained to obey. That morning, she noticed something was different. The air felt tighter. The other employees moved faster, more rigid, their eyes darting toward the entrance hall. No one explained why. No one ever did. Amara only learned by watching, and by listening when people thought she couldn't hear. He had returned. She didn't know his name yet. She only knew him as the man no one spoke about directly. The man whose presence rearranged the house without a word. The heir. The one who rarely appeared but changed everything when he did. Amara was kneeling near the staircase when she felt it. Not a sound, not a voice, a weight. The kind that settles when someone with authority enters a room. Conversations died. Footsteps slowed. Even the light seemed to shift, dimming under something unseen. She didn't look up. She never looked up. Polished shoes stopped a few steps away from her. She could see them from where she was, sharp and immaculate, facing her direction. Her fingers tightened around the cloth in her hand. She focused on the floor, on the faint stain she was scrubbing away, on anything but the man standing above her. Jae-Hoon had not intended to notice her. He had walked into the mansion with his usual composure, his face unreadable, his mind already burdened by decisions soaked in blood and consequence. To the world he was reserved, disciplined, untouchable. To those who truly knew him, he was a man who had buried every trace of softness deep enough that even he forgot it existed. But something about the stillness near the staircase pulled his attention. It was not her beauty. It was not her posture. It was the way her shoulders were slightly hunched, as if bracing for impact. The way her hands trembled just enough to betray exhaustion. And then he saw it. A bruise, dark and poorly concealed, blooming just above her collarbone. He stopped. The mansion had seen violence before. He had caused most of it. But this bruise did not belong to his world of calculated cruelty. It was careless, personal, ugly in its simplicity. "Lift your head," he said. His voice was calm, low, dangerous in the way it did not need to be loud. Amara froze. No one had ever spoken to her like that in this house. Commands usually came through supervisors, never directly, never from him. "I said lift your head." Slowly, reluctantly she obeyed. Their eyes met for the first time. His gaze was sharp, assessing, cold in a way that stripped illusions. Hers was guarded, dark, filled with a quiet resilience that had learned not to beg. The moment stretched longer than it should have. Too long for two people who were never meant to truly see each other. "What happened to you?" he asked. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Amara swallowed. She knew better than to answer honestly. Honesty had never protected her. "Nothing," she said softly. "I'm just the maid." Something in Jae-Hoon's expression shifted. Not concern, not anger. Recognition. Not anymore, he replied. And with that, the rules of both their lives quietly began to break. Amara didn't understand what he meant, and that frightened her more than if he had raised his voice. The room seemed to exhale again. Someone cleared their throat somewhere behind him. Another employee shifted uncomfortably. No one spoke. No one dared. Jae-Hoon's attention lingered on her for a fraction of a second longer, as if memorizing the exact way she stood there, kneeling, small, trying not to take up space in a house built on excess. Then he turned away. "Finish your work," he said, already walking past her. The words should have brought relief. Instead, they left something behind. A residue, a warning she couldn't name. Amara waited until his footsteps disappeared before allowing herself to breathe properly. Her hands shook as she returned to scrubbing the floor, though the stain had already vanished. She scrubbed anyway, harder than necessary, because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering his eyes, not cruel, not kind, just aware. That night she barely slept. The small room assigned to her was tucked behind the kitchen, windowless, with walls thin enough to hear the hum of the house even when it rested. She lay on her narrow bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment again and again. The way he had looked at her bruise, the way the word nothing had sounded like a lie even to her own ears. She told herself it meant nothing. Men like him didn't notice women like her, and when they did, it never ended well. The next few days passed in a strange, quiet tension. Jae-Hoon remained in the mansion, though his presence was felt more than seen. Doors opened and closed with purpose. Voices dropped when he passed. Decisions were made behind closed rooms that Amara would never be allowed to enter. And yet, she began to feel him everywhere. Not physically, something subtler, like being watched without being seen. Once, while folding fresh linens in the hallway, she felt it again. That weight. She turned instinctively, only to find him standing at the far end, speaking quietly with a suited man whose posture screamed obedience. Jae-Hoon didn't look at her this time, but she knew. She felt the awareness brush against her skin before he disappeared into another corridor. Another time she was told to bring tea to the study. The order made her chest tighten. That wing of the mansion was forbidden territory, reserved for family and important guests. But she didn't question it. She never did. Her steps were slow as she approached the heavy door. She knocked softly. "Enter." His voice again, always calm, always controlled. She stepped inside. The study smelled of old books and expensive liquor. Dark wood lined the walls, and the windows overlooked a garden she had never been allowed to enter. Jae-Hoon stood near the desk, his jacket draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up just enough to reveal forearms marked by faint scars. Not fresh. Old. Carried quietly like memories he refused to discuss. She set the tray down carefully. "Leave it," he said. She hesitated. Something in his tone suggested something else. "Yes," she replied, and turned to go. "Wait." Her body tensed immediately. He didn't move closer. He didn't touch her. He simply looked at her again, that same measuring gaze, as if trying to place her in a world that didn't quite accept her existence. "You're new?" he said. "Yes." "Where did you come from?" The question was simple. The answer was not. "From wherever needed work," she replied. A pause. That wasn't the question. She met his eyes, just for a moment, enough to remind herself she was still human. "I came from a place that doesn't matter," she said quietly. Something flickered across his face. Approval, perhaps, or recognition again. "Who did that to you?" he asked. Her fingers curled into her palms. "No one," she repeated. He studied her silence the way other men studied weakness, but he didn't push. Instead, he did something unexpected. "You're assigned to the East Wing now," he said. "You'll work closer to the main quarters." Her heart dropped. "That's not necessary," she said before she could stop herself. One of his brows lifted slightly. "You don't get to decide what's necessary here." The reminder of power was gentle but unmistakable. "Yes," she whispered. She left the study with her pulse racing, her thoughts spiraling. Being closer to him meant visibility. Visibility meant danger. She had survived by staying unseen. He was dismantling that without even trying. That night, she overheard whispers in the kitchen. Sharp glances. Disapproval thinly veiled behind politeness. "She doesn't belong there," someone muttered. "Doesn't look right," another voice added. Amara kept her head down. She always did. But the words lodged themselves inside her, heavy and familiar. She had heard them all her life. Different language. Same meaning. Above them all, unseen and unspoken, hovered one truth she didn't yet understand. Jae-Hoon had already decided she belonged to him. The East Wing was quieter. Too quiet. Amara noticed it the moment she began working there. Fewer footsteps, fewer voices. The air itself felt heavier, as if the walls were listening. The rooms were larger, colder, filled with objects that looked expensive but untouched, as though comfort had never been the purpose of this place. She worked slowly, carefully, afraid of making mistakes that would be impossible to undo. And yet, it was there that she saw him again. Not often. Never predictably. But enough to unsettle her. Sometimes she would sense him before she saw him. The shift in the air. The way the house seemed to straighten its spine. Once, while dusting a long console table, she caught his reflection in a mirror behind her. He had stopped in the doorway without a sound, watching her hands move, her shoulders tense under his gaze. She froze. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he said. She turned quickly, lowering her eyes. "You didn't, sir." He stepped inside, slowly, deliberately, not like a man walking through his own home, but like someone entering a space where something fragile existed. "You're afraid," he said. It wasn't a question. Amara swallowed. "I'm careful." A pause. Careful people don't usually look like they're waiting to be punished. The words landed too close to something buried. She said nothing. Jae-Hoon's gaze drifted around the room, then back to her face, to the bruise that had faded to yellow now but was still there. Still speaking. "Do you know why people fear this house?" he asked. She shook her head. "They think monsters live here," he continued calmly. "Men without mercy, men who break things when they're displeased." Her chest tightened. "And do they?" she asked before she could stop herself. He looked at her then, fully. Not through her, not past her. "Yes," he said. "They do." The honesty startled her more than denial would have. She expected him to leave it there. Instead, he did something worse. "But monsters," he added, "still recognize fear when they see it." Silence stretched between them. "I didn't ask to be moved here," she said softly. "I know. Then why?" "Because you don't hide well," he interrupted. Her breath caught. "You think lowering your eyes makes you invisible?" he continued. "It doesn't. It tells people exactly where to strike." She clenched her jaw. "That's not your concern." "No," he agreed. "It isn't." He turned away as if ending the conversation. Relief flooded her chest too quickly. Then he stopped. "But it became mine the moment you walked into this house with injuries you refused to explain." Her heart began to pound. "I don't need protection," she said, though the words felt thin. "That's fortunate," he replied, "because I don't offer it lightly." He left her alone in the room, her hands trembling, her thoughts in chaos. She told herself it meant nothing, that men like him collected people the way they collected objects, briefly, carelessly, until bored. Still, that night something changed. The house began to watch her differently. She noticed it in the way orders were delivered more gently, in the way food appeared on her tray that she hadn't requested, in the way certain employees stopped speaking when she entered, their eyes sharp with resentment or suspicion. And once, only once, she heard raised voices behind a closed door. A man shouting, Jae-Hoon's voice low, controlled, dangerous. She stays. The words echoed in her head long after the voices fell silent. Amara sat on her bed later, holding her knees to her chest, trying to understand how she had become something worth arguing over, worth claiming. She didn't know it yet, but lines were being drawn around her. Invisible ones, violent ones, and Jae-Hoon had already crossed a line of his own. Night fell heavier in the east wing. The lights dimmed earlier there, as if even electricity was rationed. Amara finished her duties later than usual, her body aching in the quiet way exhaustion settled into bones. She washed her hands carefully, as she always did, scrubbing until the water ran cold, until her fingers burned. Cleanliness was the only control she had left. When she stepped into the corridor, she realized she wasn't alone. Jae-Hoon stood near the window at the far end, his silhouette cut sharply against the city lights. His jacket was gone, sleeves rolled up, exposing forearms marked not by softness but by restraint. Old scars, pale and deliberate, like memories he refused to forget. He didn't turn when she approached. "You work too late," he said. "I finish what I'm given," she replied. A pause. "Do you sleep well?" he asked. The question startled her. It wasn't appropriate. It wasn't distant. It wasn't something a man like him should ask a woman like her. "I sleep," she said carefully. Not a lie. Not the truth. He finally looked at her. Really looked. Her posture too straight. Her hands folded too neatly in front of her. The way she stood as if expecting to be dismissed at any second. "You flinch," he said quietly. She stiffened. "I'm tired." "No," he said. "You flinch before you're touched." Her breath caught. Her instincts screamed to retreat, to apologize, to disappear. Instead, something raw rose in her chest. "Why are you watching me?" she asked. The question hung between them, dangerous and exposed. Jae-Hoon's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes did. A tightening. A fracture. "Because you don't belong here," he said. Her face hardened. "I know. That's not what I meant." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell faint soap and something metallic beneath it. Close enough that the power imbalance was no longer abstract. "This house destroys things that don't know how to fight back," he continued. "And you endure. I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice," he said. She laughed softly without humor. "That's easy to say from where you stand." The words landed harder than she intended. For a moment she thought he might snap. Instead, he exhaled slowly, like a man forcing himself not to remember something violent. "You think power protects you from loss," he said. "It doesn't." Silence again, thick, loaded. "Why do you stay?" he asked suddenly. The question cut deeper than any accusation. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she admitted, her voice barely steady. "And even if I did, people like me don't get many doors that stay open." His jaw tightened. "You should leave," he said. Her heart sank. Of course. There it was. "I will," she replied. "When I'm told." "That's not what I meant," he said sharply. She looked up, confused. "You should leave," he repeated, quieter now. "Before this place teaches you what it costs to be noticed." "And you?" she asked before fear could stop her. "Do you leave too?" The question lingered, dangerous and intimate. "No," he said. "I stay because I deserve it." She didn't understand what he meant. Not yet. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. Voices, the sound of authority approaching. Jae-Hoon stepped back instantly, the wall between them rebuilding itself in seconds. "Go," he said. She hesitated. "Amara," he added, using her name for the first time. The sound of it in his voice did something irreversible. She left without looking back, her heart racing, her mind unraveling. That night, she lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every pause, every look that had lingered too long. Elsewhere in the house, behind locked doors, Jae-Hoon stood alone, staring at his reflection in dark glass. He hadn't meant to say her name. He hadn't meant to see her. And yet, the sin had already been committed. Morning arrived without mercy. Amara woke before the bell, her body already tense as if it had never truly rested. The conversation from the night before clung to her skin like a second layer. His voice, her name, the way the corridor had felt smaller with him standing there. She told herself it meant nothing. Men like him noticed people every day, then forgot them. Still, when she reported for duty, something was different. She was no longer assigned to common areas, no kitchens, no laundry rooms, no visible spaces where mistakes could be quietly punished. Instead, a folded note waited beside her uniform. East Wing. Private hours. Her chest tightened. She considered refusing, considered pretending she hadn't seen it. But refusal required safety, and safety was a luxury she didn't possess. The East Wing felt colder in daylight. Sunlight filtered through tall windows but failed to warm the marble floors. She cleaned in silence, aware of every sound she made, every breath she took. She sensed him before she saw him again. This time he didn't speak. Jae-Hoon sat at a long table, documents spread before him, his attention fixed on ink and numbers that meant nothing to her. Two men stood nearby, silent, rigid, eyes sharp with the kind of loyalty that wasn't chosen freely. Amara kept her head down. She wiped surfaces that were already spotless. She moved carefully, invisibly, or tried to. "You can leave," he said without looking up. Her hands stilled. The men turned slightly surprised. "I still have work," she replied. "You don't," he said. The men exchanged glances, then stepped back and exited without question. The door closed softly behind them. The room changed. Power was no longer shared. It was concentrated. "You didn't have to send them away," she said quietly. "I did," he replied. They listened too closely. That scared her more than their presence had. She finished her task, then turned to go. "Why didn't you leave?" he asked. She paused. "You told me to go." "Yes," he said. "And you didn't." She swallowed. "Neither did you." For the first time, he looked up from the table. The silence between them stretched again, but it wasn't empty now. It was heavy with things neither of them wanted to say. "You shouldn't talk to me like that," he said. "I don't know how else to talk," she answered. Honesty, raw and unguarded. He studied her as if seeing something unfamiliar, something dangerous. "You don't know who I am," he said. "I know what you show," she replied. "And I know what people fear. Fear keeps them alive." "So does kindness," she said softly. The word lingered like a challenge. He stood slowly. The chair scraped softly against the floor. She fought the instinct to step back. "You think this is kindness?" he asked. "Letting you stay? Letting you feel seen?" She met his gaze, her hands trembling at her sides. "No," she said. "I think kindness would be telling me the truth." His expression hardened. "You don't want the truth." "I do," she whispered. "I always do." He stared at her for a long moment. Then he looked away. "Go," he said again, his voice colder now. "Before you confuse silence for safety." She left the room with her heart pounding, but something inside her refused to settle. Later that day, whispers followed her through the corridors. Looks lingered too long. Resentment sharpened into something uglier. She had been noticed, and in this house that was never free. That night, as Amara washed her hands in the small bathroom of the servants' quarters, she noticed something new. A security camera had been installed outside her door. Protection, she told herself. But protection always came with a cost. And somewhere above her, Jae-Hoon stood before a council of men who did not ask questions lightly. "She is off limits," he said. The room fell silent. "You don't make exceptions," one voice said. "I do now," Jae-Hoon replied. And in that moment, without touching her, without promising her anything, he sealed both of their fates. The first consequence came quietly, not as violence, not as threats, but as isolation. Amara noticed it in the way conversations stopped when she entered a room, in the way plates were no longer left aside for her if she arrived late, in the glances that lingered just long enough to cut. She had been invisible before. Now she was something worse. An inconvenience. She tried to move carefully to make herself smaller again, but it was too late. Once seen, invisibility could not be reclaimed. That afternoon, she was called into the laundry room by a supervisor. The tone was polite. The smile was not. "You're drawing attention," the supervisor said, folding a sheet with unnecessary precision. "That's not how things work here." "I don't mean to," Amara replied. "That's the problem," the supervisor said. "Meaning to, or not, doesn't matter. Perception does." Amara nodded. She always nodded. "You're here to work," the supervisor continued. "Not to be noticed, not to be special." "I understand." The supervisor studied her for a moment, eyes sharp, assessing. "Then make sure he understands too." Amara's chest tightened. "I don't speak to him," she said quickly. The supervisor smiled thinly. "Everyone speaks to him. Some just don't realize it yet." That night, Amara made a decision. She would not look at him again. She would not linger in rooms he occupied. She would not answer questions that weren't necessary. She would return to the version of herself that survived by disappearing. For 2 days, she succeeded. She kept her eyes lowered. She changed her routes through the mansion. She worked earlier, left later, careful never to cross paths with him. Jae-Hoon noticed immediately. He noticed the absence before he noticed anything else. The way the East Wing felt wrong without the quiet rhythm of her presence. The way his attention drifted to doorways she no longer passed through. On the third evening, he found her in the garden. She wasn't supposed to be there. No one was, after dark. The garden sat enclosed by high walls and old stone, a place meant to be admired from windows, not occupied. She stood near the far edge, her hands wrapped tightly around the handle of a broom she hadn't needed to bring. The city lights glowed faintly beyond the walls, distant and unreachable. "You're avoiding me," he said. She flinched despite herself. "I'm working," she replied without turning. "This isn't your assignment." She finally faced him, keeping her expression carefully neutral. "Then I'll leave." "Don't," he said. The word stopped her mid-step. "You were told to stay invisible," he continued. "You were good at it." Her jaw tightened. "I still am." "No," he said quietly. "You're pretending." She laughed softly, a sound edged with exhaustion. "That's what survival looks like." "You think I don't see what they're doing?" he asked. She hesitated. "I don't need you to fix it. I'm not trying to fix it." "Then what are you doing?" she asked, her voice cracking despite her effort to keep it steady. He stepped closer, stopping at a distance that felt intentional. "I'm trying not to repeat a mistake," he said. Her breath caught. "What mistake?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his jacket and placed something on the stone bench beside her. A small envelope. Heavy. "Take it," he said. She stared at it without touching it. "I don't accept gifts." "It's not a gift." "What is it then?" "An exit," he replied. "Enough to leave. Tonight if you want." Her heart began to race. "You're firing me?" "No," he said. "I'm giving you a choice." She shook her head slowly. "That's not a choice. That's you deciding I don't belong." "You don't belong here," he said, "and that's why you need to leave." Anger flared in her chest, sharp and unexpected. You don't get to decide where I belong. His eyes darkened. I get to decide where you're safe. And I get to decide if safety is worth disappearing, she shot back. The words hung between them, fragile and dangerous. He exhaled slowly, like a man losing control over something he had never meant to hold. You don't understand what's coming, he said, and you don't understand what it costs to run every time someone powerful tells you to, she replied. She turned away, leaving the envelope untouched on the bench. Behind her, Jae-Hoon watched her go, his hands clenched at his sides. He had offered her escape. She had chosen to stay, and now protecting her would require something he had sworn never to give again. The warning came the next morning. Amara felt it before she understood it. The mansion woke differently that day. Too orderly, too quiet. The kind of quiet that meant decisions had already been made. She was halfway through cleaning a guest corridor when two men she had never seen before stepped into her path. They wore dark suits, their posture rigid, their eyes unreadable. Not employees, not family, something else. Follow us, one of them said. Her stomach dropped. I'm working, she replied, keeping her voice steady. You are now, the other said. They didn't touch her, but the message was clear. Resistance would only make things worse. She followed them through halls she had never walked before, past locked doors and guarded staircases, until they reached a smaller room tucked far from the main house. Jae-Hoon was already there. He stood near the window, his back to her, his hands clasped behind him. He didn't turn when she entered. The men closed the door quietly and remained inside. Her chest tightened. You told me to leave. I told you to choose, he replied. One of the men spoke. The council has questions. Amara's heart began to race. About what? About you, the man said. Jae-Hoon turned then. His expression was calm, but his eyes were sharp with something restrained and dangerous. She has nothing to do with this, he said. That's not how perception works, another voice replied. She's become visible. The word hit her like a slap. Visible. We protect what matters, the man continued, and we remove what threatens balance. Amara understood then. This wasn't about her actions, it was about what she represented. A weakness, a disruption. I can leave, she said quickly. I'll go. Today. Jae-Hoon's gaze snapped to her. No, he said. The men exchanged looks. You offered her money, one of them said. An exit. And she refused, Jae-Hoon replied. That makes her my responsibility. The room stilled. Responsibility can be removed, the man said quietly. Jae-Hoon stepped forward. She is not to be touched, he said. Not questioned, not threatened. She leaves this room unharmed. And what do we gain in return? The man asked. Jae-Hoon didn't hesitate. Me. Silence fell like a blade. Amara stared at him, disbelief flooding her chest. What are you saying? He didn't look at her. I will step back from certain operations, he continued calmly. I will delay negotiations. I will lose ground. You'd weaken yourself for her? One of them scoffed. I'd redefine strength, Jae-Hoon replied. The men studied him carefully, calculating. Finally, one of them nodded. She leaves the mansion, he said. Tonight. Amara's heart sank. That's not what... It's done, Jae-Hoon interrupted. The men exited, leaving the door open behind them. You don't get to do this, she said, her voice shaking. You don't get to trade pieces of your life like this. He finally looked at her. Really looked at her. This is how my world works, he said. And now you know why you don't belong in it. I didn't ask you to protect me, she whispered. I know, he replied. That's why I had to. Tears burned her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You made me a problem, she said. And now you're erasing me again. His jaw tightened. This isn't erasure. This is survival. For who? she asked. He didn't answer. That evening, Amara packed quietly. No one helped her. No one said goodbye. Her room felt smaller than it ever had, stripped of even the illusion of belonging. At the gate, a car waited. Jae-Hoon stood beside it, distant, composed, untouchable once more. "This is where we end," he said. She met his gaze, her heart breaking slowly. "You don't get to decide that either." She stepped into the car without another word. As the gates closed behind her, Jae-Hoon remained standing, unmoving, watching the only thing in his world he had wanted to protect disappear. And neither of them knew that leaving would cost far more than staying ever could. The city felt louder without the mansion. Amara noticed it immediately. The chaos of traffic, the harshness of voices, the way people brushed past her without apology. She sat in the back of the car, hands folded tightly in her lap, staring out the window as the world she had barely begun to understand slipped behind her. Jae-Hoon hadn't told her where she was going. She didn't ask. The car stopped in front of a modest apartment building, worn but clean, tucked between a closed convenience store and a laundromat with flickering lights. It wasn't luxurious. It wasn't hidden behind gates or guards. It was ordinary. "This is temporary," the driver said. "Your things will be delivered tomorrow." Amara stepped out slowly, her chest tight. The car didn't wait. It pulled away, disappearing into traffic as if she had never been inside it at all. The apartment was small. One room, a narrow kitchen, a bathroom with cracked tiles. But it was quiet. And for the first time in weeks, no one was watching her. She sat on the edge of the bed and let the silence settle. Only then did the weight of what had happened press down on her chest. The way he had spoken in that room. The way he had offered himself as currency. The way he had chosen distance instead of truth. She told herself it was for the best. Men like him didn't save people. They destroyed them slowly, even when they believed they were protecting them. Still, that night she cried until her chest ached. Across the city, Jae-Hoon stood alone in the East Wing, the mansion colder than it had ever felt. The room she had cleaned was spotless, yet something essential was missing. He stared at the bench in the garden where the envelope still lay, untouched. "You did the right thing," a voice said behind him. He didn't turn. "She's safe now," the voice continued. "That's what matters." Jae-Hoon clenched his fists. "Safety without choice is just another cage." The voice fell silent. Days passed. Amara found work quickly. A cafe that paid little, but asked no questions. The owner didn't look at her twice. She poured coffee, wiped counters, smiled when required. It was familiar, comfortably painful. But sometimes when the door opened, her heart betrayed her. She dreamed of the mansion, of corridors too quiet, of a voice saying her name. Jae-Hoon returned to his world with ruthless efficiency. Meetings resumed. Deals were closed. Men obeyed. The empire stabilized. And yet, something had shifted. He stopped sleeping. He stopped drinking. He stopped pretending that what he had done was enough. One evening, a file appeared on his desk. No name on the cover, just photographs. Amara, leaving the cafe, walking home alone, standing at a bus stop at night. His chest tightened. "She was promised safety," he said quietly. "She was given distance," a man replied. "Not the same thing." Jae-Hoon stared at the images, at the bruise that had never truly left her skin, at the way she still folded herself inward, as if expecting to be struck. Distance had not freed her. It had abandoned her. That night, Amara locked her apartment door and leaned against it, exhausted. She slid down to the floor, pressing her forehead to her knees. She told herself she was done with him, that whatever had existed between them had never been real. But somewhere deep inside, something whispered a truth she wasn't ready to face. He had chosen to lose her to protect her, and she didn't know which hurt more. The night the past caught up to her, it did not knock. Amara was closing the cafe when she felt it, that familiar tightening in her chest, the instinct that had learned to recognize danger before it announced itself. The street outside was mostly empty, the neon sign flickering above the door, casting broken light across the pavement. A figure waited near the alley. She slowed. Her pulse quickened. "You disappeared," a voice said. Her blood turned cold. The man stepped forward, his face partially hidden by shadow, his presence sharp with something she had spent years trying to escape. Someone from before. From the part of her life she had never spoken about. The reason she flinched. The reason bruises had become something she learned to hide. "I told you never to look for me," she said quietly. "You don't get to decide that," he replied with a smile that wasn't kind. "Not after what your silence cost." Her heart hammered. She glanced down the street. No one was watching. No one ever was. "What do you want?" she asked. "Answers," he said. "And maybe compensation." He stepped closer. Too close. She backed away instinctively, her shoulders hitting the cafe door. Her hand fumbled for the handle, but he caught her wrist, not hard, not yet, just enough to remind her of something she had never truly escaped. "Let go," she whispered. Across the city, Jae-Hoon sat bolt upright in his chair, his phone vibrating against the desk. A message, one word. Now. He didn't hesitate. By the time he arrived, the alley was empty. The cafe door stood ajar, light spilling uselessly into the night. A cup lay shattered on the ground. Amara sat on the floor inside, her back against the counter, shaking. Jae-Hoon crossed the room in 3 steps and crouched in front of her, lowering himself until their eyes met. Powerful men did not kneel, but he did. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice steady despite the violence burning behind his eyes. She stared at him, disbelief cutting through fear. "You said this was over." "I lied," he replied. Tears spilled freely now. "You said leaving would make me safe." "I was wrong." She laughed weakly, the sound breaking apart. "That's the first honest thing you've said." He reached out, stopping just short of touching her. "I won't ask you to forgive me." "Good," she whispered, "because I don't know if I can." Footsteps echoed outside. A man shouted something from down the street. Jae-Hoon stood, his body a shield between her and the world. "They followed you," she said. "They were already watching," he replied. His phone buzzed again. Another message, then another. "They want me to end this," he said quietly, "to remind them who I am." Her breath caught. "And will you?" He looked down at her, really looked. "No," he said. "I'll remind them who I'm becoming." Sirens wailed in the distance. Not close enough, not yet. "Come with me," he said. She shook her head. "I won't disappear again." "I'm not asking you to," he replied. "I'm asking you to stand where they can see you." Fear and resolve warred inside her chest. "If I do this," she said slowly, "there's no pretending anymore. I know. And if I get hurt, I will carry that forever," he said. She studied him. The man who ruled through fear. The man who had tried to erase her for her own good. The man who was now choosing to change everything in front of her. "Then don't make this a rescue," she said. "Make it a choice." He nodded once. Outside, engines roared. Men were coming. Decisions were closing in. Amara rose to her feet beside him, her hands still shaking but her spine straight. For the first time in her life, she didn't step back. She stepped forward. They stood together under the broken neon light, the city breathing around them, unaware that something fragile and dangerous had just taken shape. Jae-Hoon moved first, opening the car door without urgency, without secrecy. No hiding, no rushing her inside like something that needed to be concealed. He waited. Amara hesitated only a second before stepping in on her own. The drive was silent, not empty but heavy with everything that had been said, and everything that still hadn't. Streetlights passed in slow rhythm, illuminating his face in fragments. Calm, controlled, but no longer distant. When they arrived, it wasn't the mansion. The car stopped at a different building, lower, older, guarded, but not grand. A place meant for meetings, not power displays. As she stepped out, Amara understood what he was doing. He wasn't taking her back into his world. He was bringing his world to the surface. Inside, men waited. Suits, stillness, eyes that measured and judged. The room fell quiet the moment Amara entered beside him. "This is unnecessary," one of them said. Jae-Hoon didn't release his gaze. "It's overdue." Another voice followed, sharper. "You've already lost leverage." He turned his head slightly enough to acknowledge Amara's presence without placing her behind him. "No," he said. "I've clarified it." She felt the weight of their stares, the unspoken questions. Who is she? Why is she here? Why now? Amara's heart pounded, but she didn't lower her eyes. "This woman is not a weakness," Jae-Hoon continued. "She is the line." A murmur rippled through the room. "You protected her once by removing her," someone said. "Now you bring her here?" "I tried protection without truth," he replied. "It failed." Silence followed. Thicker this time. Amara felt something settle inside her. Not safety, not yet, but agency. "I won't be hidden," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "And I won't be owned. If I'm here, it's because I chose to be." Eyes turned to her, surprised. Some irritated, some unsettled. Jae-Hoon nodded once, as if something had finally aligned. "This is the last decision I make without her knowing," he said, "and the last time I pretend fear is the same as control." No one argued. Because power, when it changes shape, doesn't ask for permission. Later that night, when the city had quieted and the building rested in wary stillness, Amara stood by the window, watching headlights move below like distant stars. Jae-Hoon stood a few steps behind her, close enough to feel, far enough to respect the space she hadn't yet learned to share. "This doesn't fix everything," she said. "I know," he replied, "and tomorrow might be worse." "It probably will." She turned to him then. "If I stay, it's not because you saved me." "I know," he said again, softer now. "It's because I refuse to disappear." Something in his expression broke, not violently, not loudly, quietly, like a man setting something heavy down for the first time. "That," he said, "is the only reason I deserve to stand beside you." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Outside, the city continued on, unaware that a boundary had shifted, that a man who ruled through fear had chosen restraint, that a woman who had survived by being unseen had stepped fully into the light. Once, she had whispered that she was just the maid, and once he had answered that she wasn't.